Howdy, howdy, Suitable here, and welcome to an update video on our 401 to 600 gold infantry, the analysis and rank order that we did, ranking them from 1 to I think 28 or 32. I'll go through it very quickly here, or very shortly here, but this is really trying to look at infantry and an infantry on infantry engagement, just a one-on-one, just in their starting formation. Really, it's a very, very simple set of tests, and it gives a very small amount of information. What I use that for is to sort of rank order them as far as the infantry from 401 to 600 gold in terms of each other. And the first set of tests I did with the 401 to 600 gold was okay. I only tested against two units, the longbeard, just a basic longbeard and a clan rat. And I wanted to update it and get it to be a little bit more robust, give it more reliable information, something that's a little bit more clear and stratified in sort of the right order, and that makes sense, and to really look for units that are quite weak and look for units that are very good in that price range. And again, this is just an infantry fight, and this is a very, very simple set of tests. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's one piece of information. Whether you like this type of testing or not, it's sort of up to you. I just enjoy it. I find it relaxing and fun. And going through and doing my analysis, I came up with this new list, and it reordered a lot of the units in the list. So we will go through them. So first of all, the Skaven have no units in the 401 to 600 gold range for pure infantry. So they're not on it, but really coming at the bottom of the barrel is new. The last time we went through this, flagellants were in the bottom of the barrel, the very poorest infantry in the 401 to 600 gold, and now they have been replaced with the dryads from the wood elves. Now, when we added in, the dryads did pretty poorly in the first set of tests. When we added in the tests against the great swords, they just tanked. The Dryad are actually, maybe there's some niche uses for them. They have magic damage and they have pretty decent weapon strength, and they're only 550 gold. But I could never see them being more than a one of or a two of right now, unless it's a very, very specific matchup or something that I'm not aware of. They are very poor in terms of their performance, and adding in a type of unit that could really demolish them just really did tank them into that bottom slot. And they shouldn't be there, to be perfectly honest. Now, Wood Elf Infantry, maybe it shouldn't be great because they're a high-speed range faction, but, having Dryads, which I don't know, the description might be damage dealer or something like that, in the very bottom of an infantry fight, don't think that's right. Now, they do have magic damage, and like I said, there's some things that maybe there's a niche for them as a one-of, but they... Really, what should be down at the very bottom here should be halberds, armor-piercing anti-large with shields. Like, that's what you would expect to see, because you have to give up something in a melee fight to get a shield, you have to give up something to get anti-large, you have to give up something to get armor-piercing, I think, in terms of, to make intuitive sense. And the Dryads should not be all the way down here, but they are. Alright, moving on to number 24. Is the flagellants from the Empire. Now, they only moved up one spot. They are still absolutely terrible in an infantry fight, but they are unbreakable, so they do have one of, two of, three of sort of niche uses, and I've seen them used as just a force, something to hold very specifically. They're not very good. They're not going to pull a lot of value in terms of their specific value in a fight, but their value lies in that they are unbreakable, and they're going to hold for as long as they are upright, really. So, moving on to number 23. From the Dark Elves is the Dread Spear. Now, Dread Spears have, I believe, silver shields, 450 gold. They went up one, and they should be down here. I mean, this is where an anti-large shielded unit should be. In an infantry on infantry engagement set of tests, and they are down here. So, I mean, nothing much to say. Dread Spears are down here, and they belong down here. Coming in next is the Battle Pilgrims from Bretonia. So Battle Pilgrims are not great, and I've heard people complain about them in forums and different places that they're pretty weak. Now, I had some chats when I did this first video because they weren't in 22, but they were in 20. So I said in that video that they're worse than they should be. And I know Bretonian infantry Bretonia is not supposed to have the best infantry, really. They have the peasants, they have lots of infantry, not the best infantry, and they have excellent cavalry, and they have some good lords and everything else like that. But the Battle Pilgrims being down here is just not right. They just don't make any sense to have them all the way down in in spot number 22 out of 25 and 401 to 600 gold. Should be up a little bit. Now maybe they need a bit of a reduction in price of sort of 550. That would certainly help. Maybe they need a little bit better stats. Whatever it is, they're the Dryads and Battle Pilgrims, they just stand out. They shouldn't be all the way down here. The Flagellants, you can make a case. They're unbreakable. You can make a case for them being down here. These other units, Dryads and Battle Pilgrims, absolutely not. They should be a little higher. All right, coming in at number 21 are the Vampire Count's Crypt Ghouls. Now, interesting that, when we did add the Empire Greatswords, that the Crypt Ghouls lost some spots. I guess it does make sense. They're not an armor-piercing unit, and so they're kind of in the bottom here. Crypt Ghouls should probably be better. Sort of, it's like I think of these kind of units like this. Crypt Ghouls, Dryads, Battle Pilgrims should sort of be in the middle of the pack-ish, not at the bottom. And Vampire or Undead units should never really be in the top half of these lists, because they all cause fear, because they're all unbreakable, they crumble, because they can be healed. There's lots of good reasons why Vampire Counts units, Tomb Kings, not quite as much, but also the Vampire Coast infantry should not be really in the top half of these lists. And Crypt Ghouls, though, they should be a little bit better. Really, if you look at the data, they're kind of they're just not quite performing. And I saw on a Wyvern did a video of sort of forgotten units, and he talked about the Crypt Ghouls too, and put them as a unit that really should be looked at. All right, moving on to number 20 from the Wood Elves, Eternal Guard. So this is the basic Eternal Guard, anti-large, armor piercing, I believe. And they're quite a bit ahead of the Dryads on this list in terms of their value. This is the opposite of how it should be, right? Dryads should be above Eternal Guard in an infantry-on-infantry engagement. Eternal Guard should do better in an anti-large, right? But the Dryads should be better than the Eternal Guard in this type of engagement. All right, moving along. And the Eternal Guard should be down here in number 20-ish. This is a good spot for them. This is kind of where they belong. All right, coming in number 19, the Men-at-Arms with Polearms from Bretonia. Again, a unit that should be down here. They are anti-large, armor-piercing, have a polearm. This is where they belong in an infantry-on-infantry fight, sort of in terms of their value. And, this is where they are. They could be 23, they could be 19. There's nothing. You should expect to see these units down here. All right, coming in at number 18, the Tomb Kings Nehekara Warriors. Now, when I these have recently been buffed by reducing their cost from 575 to 525, and we did look at their analysis, and they sort of have kind of gone up the list. They're still not great. Maybe they're passable. I don't know. When we added in the extra test, they went down 4 spots, and so maybe they're still not quite there. Maybe they need to be 500 gold. I mean, it's they can't be too high, but Nehekara Warriors and Crypt Ghouls should sort of be in that same-ish area, and they are in the same-ish area. I guess they're only 3 spots apart, but they should be both a little bit higher. All right, coming in number 17, the Gore Herd with Shields from the Beastmen. There's quite a big difference. Like, Beastmen infantry is sort of all over the place. I'll say, because just a Gore Herd is pretty solid. The Bestigor is really strong, and then some of their lower tier infantry is just absolutely terrible. I don't know, they're kind of all over the place in terms of how they stratify. But I mean, the Gore Herd with shields should be below the Gore Herd, and in this case, they are. The Gore Herd has yet to come. All right, coming in at number, and they went up 2 spots fighting against the Empire Greatswords. Okay, coming in at number 16 is the Bleak Swords from the Dark Elves. Again, another unit you could argue should be a little bit higher. I don't know. They do have silver shields, so maybe they belong down here, kind of in the near the mid pack, bottom half of the infantry. I'm not really sure. I'm not for buffing much of anything from Dark Elves, but I would always prefer to see units be correctly stratified in terms of where they show up on lists like this, and they're probably a little bit weak. Probably a little weak. They're coming in at 16 out of 25. All right, coming in at 15 are Marauders with Great Weapons from Norska. Now, again, you in a game where armor is really important, armor-piercing units do tend to rise to the top. Maybe they're slightly underpowered at coming in at 15. They should. I would think they should be at least mid pack. Really, they should be at least mid pack. No, I know they're not useless. They can be used, and I've seen them used. I mean, they're going to get some damage done, but they're probably a little bit. They probably underperform a little bit. But maybe this is sort of where they do belong. I'm not really sure. All right, coming in at number 14 is the Chaos Marauders with Great Weapons. It's funny, the Chaos Marauders and the Norscan Marauders sort of are right beside each other, obviously, in every place, but the Norscan Marauders have their faction mechanic, and the Chaos Marauders have none, but they're 25 cheaper. So this faction mechanic is like kind of worth in that 25 gold range is what it looks like. So again, same thing could be said. Is Chaos or Norska hurting on their infantry side? Not really. Is this really bad? No, this is maybe +1, +2 melee attack away from being probably right on the money, but they are down here in the bottom half. All right, coming in at number 13, the Eternal Guard with shields from the Wood Elves. Now they lost 1 position, but this is the exact kind of unintuitive stratification that drives me nuts when I see this. That Eternal Guard with shields outperform Eternal Guard with no shields and Dryads is just wrong. Now, good players will know this. They'll take Eternal Guard with shields all day long. They have silver shields, anti-large armor piercing. They make a decent front line. They're really solid in terms of, I mean, they're solid enough. In terms of the other infantry you can get for the Wood Elves, they really are going to shine, but they should be below basic Eternal Guard in an infantry engagement, and they should be below Dryads in an infantry engagement. But the Wood Elf infantry is exactly upside down in terms of their rank order in an infantry on infantry fight. The Dryad should be above the Eternal Guard, and the Eternal Guard should be above the Eternal Guard with shield, just because you should have to pay something to get that shield in terms of your performance in an infantry on infantry fight, and clearly they don't. So why would you pick anything else down here aside from the Eternal Guard with shields for your frontline troops? Because Dryads are just a bad choice in terms of the other units available to you. Same with the Eternal Guard, unless you just had a very good reason you needed magic damage as a one-off, or there's a very niche reason to do it. Otherwise, the Eternal Guard with shields is the only pick, really. And it's just one of those things that drives me bananas, because you should see these shielded and armor-piercing anti-large units show up a little bit lower, I would think. Especially, it's not like the High Elves, where there's only one choice for a High Elf Spearman at 500 gold. So they can really show up a little higher because there's nothing else to take or compare them to. The Wood Elves is not the case. You have Dryads, you have basic Eternal Guard with shields, and you do have other units sort of to down near that range. All right, moving along, getting really to halfway. Coming in at number 12 is the Marauder Spearman. Again, should a Chaos or Norscan Marauder with great weapons outperform a Norscan Marauder Spearman in terms of total value in an infantry fight? The answer is yes, but you can see that they don't. Now, this is to say, you can take this as two ways, saying Marauder Spearmen are OP, or that the Norskin Marauders with great weapons, the Chaos Marauders with great weapons need a buff. I think that's probably a bit of both. You're looking at -2 melee attack for the Marauder Spearmen and +2 melee attack for the Chaos Marauders, and sort of this starts to stratify a little bit correctly. Maybe that's sort of in the range, but these Marauder Spearmen shouldn't turn up above their, the Marauders with great weapons in an infantry fight. In an infantry fight, especially against units that have when you're testing against units with a lot of armor. All right, so now we're sort of getting it to the top half of the pack, and we'll go on to number 11, and that is the Red-Crested Skinks from the Lizardmen. Should they be here? Should they be a little higher? Hard to say. No, they're a bit. They got pretty decent armor piercing. They are really hampered because they have no or very little armor. I think they're a really nice fit for the Lizardmen army, and you do see them 2 of, 3 of, 4 ofs in builds. I don't think they're great against the dwarfs, but I could be proven wrong on that. They don't test all that good against the dwarf units they're going to face in general, or the dwarf units they should face. But they're a good little unit. Top half of the pack, armor piercing. I think they've been a great addition for the Lizardmen army to really round out their infantry. I still Saurus are still all sorts of messed up, but the Red-Crested Skinks are kind of probably right where they belong. And they do have the aquatic trait. All right, moving on to the top 10. Coming in at number 10, just sneaking in, are the Aspiring Champions from Chaos. Now, when we added in the Empire Greatswords, they really just hung a licking on the Aspiring Champions from Chaos. And this is sort of their weakness. Aspiring Champions are actually good at clearing trash. They have a niche. They have a niche sort of roles to fill, and they have some other reasons why you might want to bring them. But they're really low model count with amazing stats, and that leads to sort of extreme performance in terms of they're good at clearing trash. But they're awful against armor piercing, and adding in those great swords really drop them down. But they're still, you put the Aspiring Champions up against Dryads, they'll beat the tar out of them. Against Flagellants, some of these units down here, Crypt Ghouls, they just will kick the crap out of them. But you put Aspiring Champions up against anything with armor piercing, and they get beat down pretty badly. So it's one of those types of units where I think it is a balanced. I feel like it's a balanced niche pick in terms of what you see now. I don't see Aspiring Champions used a whole lot because Chaos has a lot of great infantry, and if you're going to be used, they are a one-off, sort of maybe two, in certain matchups and certain picks, and you might not pick them because of their ability. I don't think they're often picked because of their innate capability of clearing trash and dealing with having that late game leadership to deal with sort of units that are coming back from route. Like really, they're in a place to excel in some areas of this game. They're really brought from sometimes for the encouragement, and that's about it in their high leadership, which is a reason to bring them. But I would like to see them brought more for their capability, like in the Dowie matchup. If you brought Aspiring Champions at 550, they could hold down a group of Ironbreakers for quite a long time. They could hold down, Longbeards for forever at a very inexpensive price to do that. But you're just not going to see it, I don't think. I don't know. Maybe you'll see some people start using them in their niche and sort of a niche way, but more for what they're good at, which is they are actually pretty good at clearing trash. They do it they don't do it fast though. They do it efficiently in terms of total value. So I think they're an interesting unit. But they did go down 8 slots having to fight an armor-piercing anti-infantry unit. Just got crushed by the greatswords. All right, moving on to number 9. from the High Elves are the High Elf Spearmen. Now, this is one that you could argue they should not quite be this high, but again, this is the discussion that was had is that, what else is there for the High Elves down here at 500 gold? And the answer is nothing. So it sort of makes sense. And Spearmen are, their stats are good. They in terms of what they can do, I think they believe they have a silver shield as well. And, I think they're a pretty all-around good unit. They went down three slots from where they were by having to fight the greatswords, but they're still top 10, a really good all-arounder because they have the anti-large. They don't have armor piercing, I don't think, but they have just a good stat line all around. Good all-around unit, really. All right, moving on to number 8, and that is the Savage Orcs from the Greenskins. Now, the Greenskins have so much good infantry. And Savage Orcs are just good all on their own at number 8 out of 25, the 401 to 600 gold region. But they have some really great matchups because they have some physical resist and they get a lot of killing done fast. So they're pretty good at clearing low-level infantry very quickly. And, so just the whole Greenskin infantry roster is just... really solid all around, up and down. All right, moving on to number 7. From the Dowie, the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. And made in the top 10, and they're a unit, they're sort of the second best armor piercing or great weapon unit the dwarfs have. The best one is the Hammers, and then it's Dwarf Warriors great weapons. And then it's hard to say between Miners and Longbeards, the great weapons. They both really underperform. But I mean, they're not terrible. This is the best thing you can say about them. But I would like to see them a little bit better, obviously. But I'm pretty skewed in terms of wanting the Dowie to be good. But coming to number 7, they're not bad. And they can get the job done reasonably in the matchups they're going to excel in, where they're up against those units that don't have armor piercing but have good armor. All right, coming in at number 6 from the Greenskins, the Orc Boys, and again, just basic Orc Boys are a good unit. You can't really go wrong when you're picking your infantry, aside from picking them in the wrong context. But Orc Boys are just a solid little unit. 450 gold, ranked 6 out of 25 on this list. They'll do the job, but they don't have anything special like some of the other units. Like stock, they don't Vanguard deploy, they don't have armor piercing, but they do have a shield, and they sort of are okay units. All right, moving on to number 5. The top 5. Here we're getting to the cream of the crop for the infantry between 401 and 600 gold, and that will start with the Sartosa Free Company from the Vampire Coast. This is sort of a forgotten unit. I mean, they're pretty decent, but they're not undead. And again, when they first came out before Vampire Coast released, they did have armor piercing. They were pretty crushing. They took the armor piercing away, but they're still. You're still a good unit. They're still a good unit, and they're still a good unit in the in terms of the faction that they're in, because they could use some units sort of in that range to do what the Sartosa Free Company does. The problem is they're only in Aranus Assault Spites faction. So if you play Sartosa Free Company, you have to take a basic Lord, and you can't get that. Count Noctilus, which is sort of the meta Lord, or Luther Harkon, or really anyone else. So I think that's what's holding him back, because even though the Sartosa Free Company are solid, if you play that faction, you can't get the Lords you want for the Vampire Coast. All right, moving on to number 4. From the Greenskins, the Nasty Skulkers. Nasty Skulkers are really good. I mean, they have so many potential uses. They have that nice little buff, armor piercing, and the smoke bomb, which slows things down. Like, they're an all-around solid unit. And the stock, I mean, they're on you before you know it. So, aside from their just capability in melee, they have other uses, and you put the WoW on them or some of the buffs they can get, they can be absolutely crushing. All right, coming in at number 3, top 3. Here we come. From the Beastmen is the Goreherd. Now the Goreherd recently got a buff, and when we added in the fight against the Greatswords, they actually went up 2 spots and got into the top 3. So Beastman Goreherd is not going to be a bad choice in if you're looking for sort of that tier down from the best of Gore. A 2 of in an army, I don't know, maybe they can make a full line in some matchups. Like, frick, I could see the Goreherd doing pretty good in some matchups, to be honest. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But their performance in the testing is really good, and they have been buffed recently, and they are doing really well. I don't know. I don't play Beastmen, and I haven't seen a whole lot of Beastmen games, and I haven't really been looking for Goreherd. But if there's any Beastmen mains out there, or people that play the Beastmen regularly, have you noticed the Goreherd, kind of where they are since the most recent buffs? Are they sort of performing? Are you picking them 2 of, 3 of, 4 of, 1 of? What sort of rates and what factions are you picking them against? Like, could they be really good against? I don't know. Maybe the Greenskins. Maybe they're going to be good against the vampire counts. I don't know. They're going to kill. They clear trash really fast. They just don't have any armor. So, anyways, coming into the top 2 at number 2 from the Dowie, Dwarf Warriors. Just your basic Dwarf Warriors is an efficient unit. You see Dwarf Warriors picked lots, 2 of, sometimes for front lines. They're just an all-around efficient unit, and they went up 1 spot when they fought the Greatswords in this list. So, which is interesting because you think they would have heard them. I expected the Dwarf Warriors, your basic Dwarf Warriors, to go down in this list after fighting the Greatswords, but they went up 1. And I mean, if you play Dwarf, Dwarf Warriors are just a solid all-around pick. They got good stats. I think 22 melee attack, 40 melee defense, and bronze shield, and charge defense against large. They're just a good all-around unit. All right, moving on to number 1. If you watched the original one, you know who these guys are. They not only didn't move out of number 1, they increased the gap of how much better they did than every other unit in this list, and that is from the Greenskins, the Night Goblin Fanatics. Like, they absolutely perform in a straight up fight, and it's because of those loonies. And I've heard people talk about them being incredibly hard to use. I get it. It's like using your bombs and your gyrocopters. It's really hard to use, but boy, oh boy, are they powerful. They are really powerful. And Night Goblins, they have stock, they have poison, they have other reasons why they're a good unit, but those Fanatics, boy oh boy, super micro intensive, but in a vacuum they're super powerful. And this is a vacuum testing. There's no context at all whatsoever. The testing is always set up to try and be repeatable. But those Night Goblin Fanatics, man, they get the job done if they're used correctly, which is, I don't know, it's really hard. And I've seen lots of people bring Fanatics in games, and it's hard to use just even one of them well, let alone all 3 shots. Like, you see in their fights, like, they actually pulled positive value against everyone they fought. Against the Longbeards, against the Clan Rats, against the Greatswords. They pulled what was the positive value they pulled from the Greatswords? It was huge, 117 gold. I mean, not as much as the Nasty Skulkers, though. Nasty Skulkers, Jiminy Crickets, those are good units. But, yeah, pulled 117 gold. Pulled, positive gold against every unit they faced. They are just an all-around excellent unit. Could you have 5 in your front line, try and get all of their things off? No, but if you can focus them, sort of a 2 of in an army, I'm sure they could get some work done. Boy, oh boy. And if you ever got them anywhere near a blob, it's just be crushing. Those loonies really do a lot of damage. So anyways, that's the sort of the updated list. I did have this on the live stream when I did all the testing. I did want to make an independent video of the list to see where these units are. This list feels a lot better as I read it and as I look at it, as to where these units sort of fit in the pantheon of units from 401 to 600 gold. They seem to make a lot more sense. Units that I hear people talk about as being poor units are near the bottom. Units that I hear people talk about as being good units are generally at the top. There are some units that don't really show up on anyone's discussion, like Orc Boy, Sartosa Free Company, and Goreherd. But there are units you see lots, like you see High Elf Spearmen all the time, Eternal Guard with shields from the Wood Elves all the time. You don't see Aspiring Champions. You know, I could see them being a decent one of in some matchups. They have to be. They just have to be. But you don't really see them. And the units that we do see flagellants, so flagellants maybe belong where they are. Maybe they have enough use because they're unbreakable that they should be down here, but the dryads most certainly should not. Battle pilgrims shouldn't. Crypt ghouls shouldn't. Nehakar warrior could use a little bump. You know, maybe the bleak swords, marauders and chaos marauders with great weapons, sure. And the marauder spearmen coming down, eternal guard with shields coming down. Like, you can see how these would stratify. If these were just changed a little bit, this grouping would stratify a little bit better. But you know, every single unit has its own dynamics within its faction. I mean, I've talked with some pretty good players about Eternal Guard with shields, and they're kind of the solid pick in that front line, and for good reason, right? So, anyways, that's the list. I'd love to hear from you guys on the new list. I think it feels, there might be, you know, some units that are a little bit out, but they feels pretty good. And this is one of those things, like, you could test every unit against every other unit in every configuration, in every formation, and then test them all again with every buff from every hero within the faction, and get yourself 10 trillion tests. And, you know, it's still the analysis would have to start. How do you choose which units are better? You know, and still, after you had all that, it's still only a small piece of the puzzle. So this is a tiny piece of the puzzle. It's just a bit of information and a bit of fun, and I do like doing these ranks and seeing how these units show up. Night Goblin Fanatics pulled away in their first place. They were first place last time. Now they're even more in first place. So love to hear from you. I always ask for comments because this is my favorite part of doing this. I love comments. So hope you found it interesting, and I will see you soon.